add on what we can do with our own created functions. As you've seen with the functions that we've called from the standard library, you can provide a function value and get a value back. For example, when we use the toUpper function, you provided a character, and the function returns the uppercase version of that character. Your own functions can also receive values and return a value. This allows your functions to communicate with the rest of your program. Now, the next program we're going to write is the yes or no program. It asks the user typical questions a gamer might have to answer. First, it asks the user to indicate yes or no, and then the program gets more specific and asks whether the user wants to save his game. Again, the results of the program, they aren't really all that outstanding here. It's the implementation that is useful. Each question is posed by a different function that communicates with the main function. So let's go ahead and see how that works. Okay, we've got our new text document, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'll save it as yes or no.cpp. And I'll have my introductory comments, the title of my program, and then demonstrates, return values, and parameters. I'll include IOStream, and I'm also going to include string, because we are going to be using some string objects in this program. I'll declare that I'm using the std namespace, and I'll have my function prototypes. First one is a car function, yes, no, 1. And then another car, yes, no, 2. With the parameter of string question, and we'll get more into that in a moment. But those are my prototypes. That's basically describing the function, what to expect out of that function. I'll open up my main function, and okay, the first function I declare, ask yes no 1, returns a car value. You can tell this from the function prototype before my main function. It says car, ask yes no 1. It will return a character. So I want to retrieve the value from that function after it runs. So I will declare a variable called a car variable called answer1, and I will set that equal to my ask yes no 1 function. Okay, and then I will cout thanks for answering, answer1, and then 2 new lines. My second function, ask yes no 2, also returns a car. So I will put that into answer2, ask yes no 2. Now, because my prototype gives an argument here, a string with an identifier question, I need to define what that string is. And what I'm doing here is I'm passing the question along to the function. Do you wish to save your game? Okay, so when it calls ask yes no 2, it will send do you wish to save your game into a variable with the identifier question. And then we'll thank them for answering. We'll display their answer and have a blank line. Okay, that's all for the main function, so I return 0. And now it's time to go ahead and define these functions. So I will define ask yes, no, 1. Okay, I want it to return the response, so I will define a variable called response1, a car variable. And then I'll have a do loop. Please enter yes or no, or y or n. And then I'll store their response in response1. Okay, I close my do loop, and I want that to run while response1 is not equal to yes and response1 is not equal to end. So this do loop will run for as long as it takes until the user enters a y or an n. And then, once it's done with that loop, it will return response1. Now, where does it return response1? It will store it in answer1 in the main function. Okay, so we're returning a value from the function to send information back to the calling function, back to our main function. Okay, so we have to specify return type, which we did when we defined that as a car. And then we have to return a value of that type from the function, which we do because response1 is a car. The return statement, usually we've just put return 0 because that's the code that indicates that the program has exited normally. Since we want to return that value to our main function, we have return response1. So whatever is in response1 will be returned, and it will be saved in our answer1 variable. Okay, so that is ask yes no 1. Now we will define ask yes no 2. This one's a little bit different because we are sending a string value to it. We're sending a parameter. The do you wish to save your game is the parameter stored in the variable question. Okay, so we have car ask yes no 2, and it gets a parameter type string identifier question. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to be returning a value from this one as well. So we will create a car called response2. We'll set up another do loop. And now we can just see out the question that we've passed from our main function. And then we'll tell them what type of response we're looking for. And accept that response into response2. Close, and we will run this while response2 is not equal to yes, and while response2 is not equal to n. Once it successfully exits the loop, we'll return response2, and that's the end of our main function. or of our ask yes no to function. Okay, so once again, ask yes no to accepts a parameter of a type string with an identifier question. It sends that variable into the ask yes no to function. We set that parameter when we call the function, and we set that parameter to be, do you wish to save your game? Okay, that's a value that we're passing to this parameter, and it gets used here. We then get their response, and as soon as it's a valid response, we return response 2 back into our main function, and it gets stored in the character variable answer 2, and then we can say thanks for answering, give answer 2, and then we shut down the program. So let's go ahead and save this, and we'll compile it and run it. Okay, it says please enter yes or no. Just to show the loop working, I'll put a D. Okay, I'll put yes now. It says thanks for answering yes. Now we've gone into our next function, our ask yes no to function. Do you wish to save your game? And until I put an appropriate response, it will keep asking me. Say no. It says thanks for answering N. Okay, so that covers sending these return values. And now you may ask yourself, why don't we use response 1 and response 2 back in our main function? Well, the reason we don't is because you can't. These two variables, response 1, response 2, they do not exist outside of these functions. There's a concept called encapsulation. No variable that you create in a function can be used outside of that function. It is completely independent. It can't be directly accessed other than inside these two functions. This way, you can use the same basic or even the exact same variable name in multiple ways within multiple functions, because that variable only exists inside of that particular variable. It's a lot like abstraction because they're closely related. Encapsulation is one of the principles of abstraction. Abstraction saves you from worrying about the details. Encapsulation hides the details from you. As an example, when you use your television remote control with the volume up and volume down button, you don't need to know how many different volume levels there are in your television. All you need to know is what happens when you push the up volume button or the down volume button. Okay. All you have to do is push the button and it raises or lowers the value. Okay. You cannot get to a specific volume level directly. You can only push up and push down. The actual volume number is encapsulated and it's not directly available to you. So in this case, the only way response 1 is available to the main function is if we store it in a variable within the main function. That's called encapsulation. We can't just ask for response 1 in main because response 1 doesn't exist here. Okay, we'll understand how that works a little bit later. We'll have another example where we work with scopes, and we can see how variables can be changed as we move in and out of different scopes in different functions or different scopes within our main function. So just stay tuned for that. And until then, just let me know if you have any questions or problems, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Thanks.